Good evening, everyone. I'm Mary Watson, Executive Dean of the Schools of Public Engagement at the New School. And it's my pleasure tonight to welcome you here to the New School and to tonight's event. But before we begin, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge with respect the indigenous peoples on whose ancestral lands the New School now stands. So tonight we are thrilled to partner with the Strand Bookstore to host the launch of the new memoir of Ani DiFranco. Ani's memoir, No Walls and the Recurring Dream. Ani's memoir, No Walls and the Recurring Dream, published by Viking Press, touches on so many themes that are central to the work that we do here at the New School, from the transformative power of music to the importance of a feminist education, to political activism and entrepreneurship with impact. And this evening, we look forward to hearing Ani speak on all of these subjects and more. Tonight comes at a very special time in the history of the New School, as we are celebrating this year our centennial. So it's our 100th birthday. And in 1919, 100 years ago, the New School unveiled a new model of education that was designed to engage the public in the open discussion of ideas and the shaping of civic life. The founders of the New School left Columbia University, the old school, to found a new university that was predicated on the ideas that were troubling people in 1919. In 1919, there was rising fascism around the world. There was rising xenophobia and debilitating amount of tolerance, lack of tolerance against different groups. There was public sentiment about anti-war movements, as well as the requirements to sign loyalty oath agreements to the U.S. And at that time, the founders of the New School, who included John Dewey and others, came downtown to found a new university where knowledge was lifelong, where activist scholarship mattered in the world, and where the people that were learning brought their whole selves to the process. And so this year we celebrate 100 years with a centennial festival in the fall, which we're calling the Festival of New. This week-long festival in October of this year will open the university to the wider New School community. So we invite you to come into our classrooms and take our classes, to join the hundreds of events that we'll be running from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. each of the festival days, to join us at our alumni concert in Union Square featuring Lion Babe and other events. So we would welcome you to join us into the New School during the first week of October for the centennial. So now, as many of you know, Ani DiFranco is a former student of the New School. And all of us watch with pride as her work as a poet, singer, songwriter, and activist has inspired generations across the world. In preparing for tonight's event, I took a look at an interview that Ani gave to The Sun magazine in 2016, where she talks a little bit about the time that she had at the New School. And in the interview, she talks about the influence of the late, great poet Sekou Sundiata, who taught here at the New School for more than 20 years. And here's what Ani says in her interview. My racial consciousness was transformed at the New School. I remember how Sekou would sit at the front of the class and let people vent all their racial tension at each other. And then he would just drop a question on the group and make everyone stop and breathe. He had a real grace as a teacher. He was an Afrocentric New York poet who performed his work with a funk band. I was captivated by his explorations of the rhythm of language and his way of promoting social justice throughout his art. He taught me that you do your work every day. Like Utah Phillips would say, quoting the great Catholic worker, anarchist, and pacifist Eamon Hennessy, my body is my ballot. I vote with my body every day, all day long. And so as we celebrate with Ani tonight, we also celebrate the legacy of Sekou Sundiata and the many incredible artists and scholars who have made their home at the New School throughout our 100-year history. So now on to tonight's program. Joining Ani in conversation, I'm first thrilled to introduce Cecile Richards. Cecile Richards is a national leader for women's rights and social and economic justice, and the author of the New York Times bestseller, make trouble. As president of Planned Parenthood Federation of America and Planned Parenthood Action Fund for 12 years, Richards worked to increase affordable access to reproductive health care and to build a healthier and safer world for women and young people. Cecile also served as Deputy Chief of Staff to House Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi. And in 2011 and 2012 was named one of Time Magazine's 100 most influential people in the world. Welcome, Cecile. And now, without further ado, our guest of honor, Ani DiFranco. Ani is a Grammy Award-winning musical artist and feminist icon, recognized for her poetry and songwriting, which pierces social convention and challenges the status quo, as well as for her social activism and political engagements. One of the first artists to create her own label in 1990, she is the mother or female-inspired creator of the DIY movement and has sold over 5.5 million albums in her own Righteous Babe Records. She recently released her 20th studio album. And while she's been known as the little folk singer, her music has embraced many genres and collaborators ranging from Pete Seeger to Chuck D to Prince. And I thank you for joining us tonight at the New School. Welcome, Ani and Cecile. Over to you.
So congratulations.
Thanks.
This
Wow,
book came out today. You all are on the right, this is it.
This is a really cool end to a really cool day for me. Thanks for coming out this evening, you guys. Really appreciate it.
So do you want to start by reading a little bit from your book?
Yes, that's the idea, huh? That's
yes.
what happens?
Yeah,
I don't know.
We think
I'm
that would be a
new to
great
this.
way to start.
Okay, I'll see if I can read right now. It's the other Ani. All right, well, in honor of you, Cecile, bless you, Cecile Richards, for being here and everything that you have done with your time on the planet. I thought I'd read a little section of my book where I talk about walking into Planned Parenthood for the first time in Buffalo, New York. All right. Planned Parenthood in Buffalo. Oh, I lost my page. Okay. All right. Before I screw up here, let me see if I can get this done. Reproductive system. I never met a boy my own age who could return my gaze, so it was somewhat inevitable that I would end up with a man. When the first boyfriend and I became attracted to each other, it was all above board, and to my undiscerning eye, it looked consensual and balanced. We courted, much like people the same age would court. We stammered while sparks flew between us, and we circled closer and closer in. His biggest fear was that what he wanted to do was illegal, and an accusation of statutory rape could end his life as he knew it. My biggest fear was getting pregnant. Together, we decided that I would go on the pill, and we would wait for a month until it was safely in effect to act on our desire. That was a sexy-ass month. I must have been the only teenage virgin to ever walk into the Buffalo Planned Parenthood to properly plan for having her first run-in with a penis, because I was an instant celebrity. The nurse practitioner took me around the whole office. and introduced me to everyone. They all acted proud of me, and it felt like I was giving them hope. Maybe some of the educational efforts they had been putting forth were having an effect on society. Maybe the world was changing for young women. Ha! This made it all the harder to walk into that same Planned Parenthood a few years later, pregnant and crying my eyes out. Their steeled looks of disappointment compounding the disappointment I felt in myself. I had been on the pill, but in those days, the pill was like a hormonal sledgehammer on a tiny 100-pound girl like me. After a few years of feeling like I was going to pass out with dizziness every time I stood up, I just couldn't take it anymore. I went off the pill, and instantly I was pregnant. Why? Why would you stop taking it? The nurse asked me as I cried in her office. I don't know, I whimpered. I just made a mistake. I didn't know I was pregnant for quite a while. Denial is powerful stuff. But when your body has been doing nothing but transforming itself before your eyes for years, the fact that your tits might one day grow to twice their former size does not seem unheard of. Nor does the menstrual period being screwy, since it's always been screwy and you have not learned to pay attention to it anyway, so actually you have no idea. Instead, I just thought I'd taken my familial turn towards the suicidal. I wanted to lie in bed all day. I had no energy. I was severely depressed for the first time. I felt suddenly hopeless. I languished in this state until it was almost too late to have an abortion. Then finally, the period not being around as much as I'd vaguely remembered made my denial bubble burst. When I was finally walking up to Women's Services on Elmwood Avenue to terminate my pregnancy, I could not have been more sure of what I was doing. The news that I was pregnant hit me like a rock and then transformed itself into the greatest relief I'd ever felt. This was a solvable problem, not the end of my life. Writing poems and songs, playing guitar, painting, dancing, those were my joys and my first intuitive steps towards finding peace within myself. I had gigs around town to look forward to. I walked up and down Elmwood Avenue, hanging up my flyers. You just can't imagine, unless maybe you once were an 18-year-old girl yourself, how much the thought of becoming a mom was unthinkable to me on every level. Not to mention the idea of being permanently soldered to the first boyfriend. That felt like the greatest of all curses. I had to steel myself against the forces of shaming that came rushing in at me from all sides. I walked past those anti-choice protesters yelling at me with their gory placards, and I tried to exhale their rage and my guilt as I pushed open the Women's Services door. The guilt in me came not from wondering if I was committing murder, but from worrying that I was supposed to be feeling more remorse than I did. My body's strong sense that those protesters were deeply full of shit, not to mention totally wrong about what was right and merciful for everyone involved, was in conflict with my mind, which lurked in dark, self-defeating places and waited for opportunities to turn on me. The first boyfriend said he would help me by paying for the abortion, but he never did. He said I should have the baby and marry him, but that was the opposite of what I was thinking. I had spent 3 years with him, but after the abortion, I told him I wanted to break up. He resisted mightily. There was the wrenching of phones from walls and the kicking in of doors. There were holes in the plasterboard right next to where my head had been. And then there was quiet, and a new era for me began. Thanks so much.
So I'm so glad, for many reasons, I'm so glad you read that passage. And this book is so deeply personal. And for those of you, as you read it now, you'll find out, like, Ani is so open about her life and her experiences. And I know that there's this one
Mom.
line you
I just said sorry, Mom.
No, I know, right? Isn't that a feeling when you're, anyway, we'll get to that, but I just love this other line you write, that every situation is unique and every woman is right when she decides what is right for herself. That is so powerful, right? So powerful. So I just, I guess it's the part of the program where I just want to say, thank you. Not everyone can share their story, and I think it is absolutely the right of every person in this country to share or not share whatever the hell they want to about their life. But I just want to say the courage that you have shown in both your public support for Planned Parenthood, your public support for reproductive rights and access, and now sharing your story, it's going to change the lives of a lot of people in this country. I'm just telling you, I know from experience. So I just want to say before the rest of this, thank you for being so courageous and brave and doing that. Our parents get over it, I think, at some point. But no, but it is a hard thing, right? Because actually I was going to ask you about that because, so congratulations on writing the book. It's amazing.
Yeah,
To read a book written by a poet is amazing, right? So that's why you also have to read this, because it is just your language, your eloquence, your poetry that's in the book. It's incredibly moving. I think there is a real power of women telling their own stories in their own words, and that's happening more and more. So I would love you just to share a little bit we were talking a little bit backstage about what it was like to actually do this. It was a huge labor of love, obviously, and also there's a lot of people, a lot of your friends and lovers and other people that are in this book. So how did it feel to you? How do you feel now? Share that with us, because we're the lucky ones that are getting to hear this for the first time.
Well, yeah, wow. I'll start at the very end of the process, when I was recording the audiobook, because there's an audiobook right now. And I didn't consider recording the audiobook to be a thing at all. I just and then I'll go read it. And so, okay, that's cool this week. And I showed up at this recording studio in New Orleans, where I live, and I sat down in front of the mic and I panicked. I just felt trapped. I felt awful. I felt scared. I was like, suddenly, whoa. And over the course of 4 days of reading this audiobook, this is not probably a good sell, I felt violated. I can't believe I agreed to this. This is somehow not, and it took me a while to realize that the only way I could write the book is by doing this thing that I have become really practiced at, which is pretending, a game of pretend, where in order to create something, to take the risk of using your voice, to say your truth, even the inconvenient aspects of your truth, I developed a strong ability to pretend that I'm alone. And I do it alone. And I have so practiced at this game of pretend that it has carried me through hundreds of songs and now hundreds of pages of complete sentences. And then it was like the gig was up. When I got into that recording studio, I realized, I'm so not alone. Now I'm going to speak this stuff that I could barely write into a microphone for anybody with $5.95. I'm like, what the fuck? My mother has $5.95.
Some of the folks in this book, I think, have $5.95.
Yes, most of the folks in this book have $5.95. And it all, from then, I've been sort of in a rolling panic. A rolling panic. And And at first it was this amorphous form of what will people say, and then it distilled down to the people in this book, the people that I show through my eyes that didn't sign up for this project. It distilled to my immediate family who is left, and I still haven't heard back from them. I still haven't spoken to them. I was gonna send them a pre-release copy, but then I forgot. So, yeah, I think that's the way I do it. You know, I'm sure there are many, many ways of making art in this world and being brave, and that's the only way I know how.
Yeah. Well, it comes across, and yeah, my dad still hasn't called me about my book, but actually, I like that you mentioned that, because one of the really great themes to me about the whole book is the folks that you meet along the way in your journey, and fellow travelers and musicians. And so I was going to read this one line. Accumulate enough accomplishments, and you realize that the reward is not really in the outcome anyway, but in the relationships that you forge along the way. And I feel like that's, for a lot of activists, that's true too. It's sort of, if you think it's all about the end game, then you forget to all the amazing people that you meet along the way in the struggle, and many of whom you talk about, you know, Pete Seeger, and just these phenomenal people. So I would just love to, maybe you could share something about that, about how friendships and people have really shaped your career.
Yeah. When I was first meeting with publishers, first of all, thank you, Viking team, for having my back and for the journey ahead. I had to make a book proposal, and have an outline, and there's a whole, to get a publishing deal. And I had to say what I was going to do. Of course, I was completely making it up and completely did something different. But in my book proposal, one of the ideas that I had was to have some letters, a series of letters in the book to my teachers, honoring my teachers, letters of gratitude. And some people picked up on that, some of the publishers I met with. Oh, that's a cool idea, you should definitely do that. And other people had suggestions about, well, maybe you could make each chapter one, an album, of your 20 albums that you've made or so, and I remember that suggestion and thinking, I don't remember making those albums. I don't care about making those albums. I couldn't imagine structuring my life that way. And I realized that what I remember my journey as is, well, then I met that person, and then I met that person, and then that person, and that's my life to me. So as it turns out, the whole book is just those letters, really. It's really just a story of the people who made me. And that's just, I guess, when I was trying to distill my life and my experience, that's what it looked like, exactly what you're saying.
No, and they just come through so vividly, and you're so generous about the role that each of them played on this journey. So one of the most incredible things, which I kind of knew intellectually but didn't really quite get until I read the book, is that you started when you were 19 years old and had your own record label, okay? Which is just insane. And I love that, because I think one of the things that women are doing now more, and I think my theme now is just start before you're ready. Don't wait until things are all lined up. And obviously you were the original start before you're ready. So I'd love to just share a little bit about what that's like to start your own record label at 19. And then of course, most wonderfully, if maybe you could share the story about how you came up with the name of your record label.
Oh, yeah.
Because I love that story.
Yeah, so originally it was Righteous Records. That was what I scribbled on my first cassette or two. And then as it turns out, there is a Righteous Records in Oklahoma, and they put out gospel music. So we contacted them, and they were like, no for you. And so yeah, Babe, Babe was what me and my friend Susie, who was kind of my best pal at the time, we used to call each other, and it was our way of taking the piss out of the world of men. Hey baby, oh baby, what's your name, baby? You want to ride with me, baby? Hey babe, 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 na. So we used to hey baby each other all day long just to make each other laugh. So Righteous Babe Records was the sort of most ironic way I could find to not get sued. Thank goodness, because, I think it was an essential part of the name in order to communicate with my fellow righteous babes out there. And then it sort of spoke loud and clear, I think.
Yeah, no, I love it that how people just heard the name and just started writing you and just fans everywhere. And so what do you say to young women now who come up, who are in the, who want to, I don't know, start their own label or get into music? Or is there something that you tell? Because young women must follow you everywhere. I know they do throughout the book. And is there something that you learned about doing that yourself that you would say, okay, don't ever do this, but do this? Or, I don't know,
I guess the first thing that I would hope that young woman would do is listen to her own voice, because as many of us know, it will often be contradicted by all the voices around you, and that gets confusing. So trusting your own voice is the first thing you got to do, and then you follow that where it leads. And I would say my only other bit of advice is follow that until you get tired, and then sit down. One of the things I regret about my journey, I came out fast and furious on a mission, and I was spitting albums into the world before I could even, think about what I was doing. And I did that for so long, it became my only mode. And there was a point in my journey, about the point at which this book ends, when I should have sat down and shut up for a while. I needed to turn off the spotlight and go into the dark and refine myself, and I didn't. I stayed in the spotlight for years, floundering, flailing, suffering, and it was not good for anybody. It was not good years. I wish that I had been wise enough to take the time I needed for myself during that mission.
I think, that you're right. The book does end and you go, wait, so we're going to be ready. Once you read this, you're going to want the second volume, because there's so much that you're on the edge of your seat. But I think you do such a good job of being really honest about that you were carrying at a very young age a whole community and all these expectations. And so I think it's a really interesting observation right now, because that's actually something I think women are saying right now, which is, okay, when do I get to stop? Because whether it's these last 2 years and being resistors on everything and feeling like it's just overwhelming. And I think some of us are hardwired to just go, no, it's okay, we're going to keep going. And sometimes we do have to go, it's all right. You can take a step off the field, and we can take care of each other and support each other, and we don't have to all do it every single day. So I think that comes through. Is that sort of how it felt for you, that finally there was some chance to just step back?
I don't think I'm still learning that. I had yet to learn it. This girl in this book had yet to learn it. But I think, it's just such a vital part of the process, restoration and self-care, and so that is something that only 20 years after this, now it's like, oh, wait. And and I think back to my dad, whenever I would leave him and hug him goodbye, he always would say, eat when you're hungry, sleep when you're tired. And it's like, right. I hear you now, Dad. 30 years later.
I love your stories about your dad. Quite amazing. Another thing you write, so I'm just going to say, because I think this is very relevant for the days, it says, you're writing about a women's music festival. There's a long, interesting chapter or section in there, but you write, it's surprising, even for a female who believes herself no less capable, to actually experience a world built and run by women, right? I love that. When you've never experienced something, it has a subliminal effect of making you believe it's not possible. And so even though you were talking about women's music and a women's music festival, I think that same idea kind of applies to our politics in our country. Like, can you imagine if we actually lived in a country run by women instead of men? It's kind of exciting, and I think,
Good thing it's starting to happen.
It is. Kind of. No, but it's but in an interesting way. I think that I took a lot out of your book in that way, because I know a lot of us are trying to imagine what would real equity look like.
I think equity is an important, precise way to put it, because of course, later on in that section, I talk about this world of women at this women's music festival and being like, wow, that's a whole other rabbit hole right there. That's got its own downsides. And I was really reassured to connect with the wonderful poet Judy Grand. Judy Grand's work. She wrote this epic poem called A Woman is Talking to Death, which I encountered here at the New School in gay and lesbian literature class or something. And A Woman is Talking to Death is just a beautiful, beautiful poem, and Judy's work has been so important for me. And recently I had the honor of introducing her as she was being inducted into the Tennessee Williams Literary Hall of Fame in New Orleans. So, and then I was hanging out with her after the shindig, and we were joking, and I was so reassured to hear Judy, who's been like super dyke since before that was cool, like, to saying, like, reiterating that same thing of you don't want only women in the room, you don't want only men. We can only create that resonant balance together in the resonance and the mixing of our sensibilities and our talents and our basic, not to be absolute about it. Of course, I am masculine and feminine. We are all both. But the two genders together is what heals human society.
Yeah, and it also requires some people who've been taking up more than their space, making room for other folks to have some space too, right? I think it's...
Indeed.
So, but yeah, no, anyway, there's just so many pieces in the book. I love, you also write this line, sorry, I just have some of my favorite lines, it's just that you can't rely on others for your self-worth. And I just think this is really important advice for a lot of women, because we constantly are trying to measure ourselves up against someone else's expectations. And you may have some reflections about that, but I just feel like your book is full of that you had this confidence and just surety of the rightness of, and really the righteousness of what you were doing. And I wish more women, and particularly young women, felt that. But we are so judged and so shamed, and it's still, I think, very tough. It's hard to be a girl, as someone said the other day.
Yeah, and hard to come out from under that cloak of a way of judging, a way of seeing that is not of you, and you don't realize that you're embodying it. I was doing a public interview in New Orleans the other day at Jazz Fest. I was at Jazz Fest, and there was a little question and answer at the end, and a woman my age or maybe a little older came up to the mic and said, as we approach middle age, or as we, become middle-aged women, we become invisible. And I was wondering if you could speak to that, what that feels like to you in this, And I was like, well, who are you invisible to? You're now invisible as a sex object? Fucking great. How liberating, because I really believe that It's like if you just can get that cloak off you, you'll realize you're becoming more and more visible to yourself. And women are becoming visible to each other. And this seems like such a better visibility to be having.
Yeah.
You know.
No, it's a really, right on. So since you mentioned that, it's kind of funny. So even though we've never met, of course, I was just at Jazz Fest and saw you, and it was great because there aren't that many women that perform at Jazz Fest, but we can talk about that at another time. But I mean, again, I think all these things I just start noticing. But I loved this line. A good weekend at a folk festival can leave you marveling at this thing with the power to put us all back together after the world has torn us apart. Which just makes me want to cry right now. Because, I just love that because it's funny. And we were talking about that I've spent a lot of time in New Orleans too, but hearing Aaron Neville sing Louisiana just made me feel like, okay, things are going to be okay. And so this whole power of music that you have spent your entire lifetime bringing to people and seeing it as a source of inspiration and healing, I'd love you to just talk a little bit about that because I thought that just struck me as something that's going to be it's really important to all of us, particularly that are working in social justice. Is like this power of music is really, really needed right now.
Yeah, amen, sister. One of the things that we've been...
Can I tell my kids that you said amen, sister, to me? That would give me so much street cred with my children. Someone write that down, or I will, okay. Anyway, okay, but back to you.
Oh, man, if I can, I'm going to need some street cred with my 12-year-old daughter, too, so...
Okay.
Yeah, I mean... Music, when I was young, like I talk about in the book, I was interested in so many forms of self-expression, just getting it out, damn spot. And I was drawing and painting and dancing and whatever else, miming. But music is something everybody takes so personally. And it doesn't happen in this community or in this space. It happens in all of our homes and our lives and our bodies and our dreams. And so I don't have to guess at why music was the thing that just captured me and took me away. Because it was this way of finding my family in the world. It's what I was searching for all along, and I still am, through a song can connect you with another person in such a deep and profound way. I always reflect back to my experience of visiting Burma. I went a few years ago now to bear witness to the struggle for democracy in Burma. It's an incredibly war-torn country, dictatorship, something like genocide happening there. And people who are giving their lives every day for the dream of democracy, which coming from America is like, Jesus Christ, we can't even vote here. We have earned this incredible power and we don't use it. And you see these people being tortured and killed and et cetera for this power. So I show up at these refugee camps and these hospitals and these repopulated communities hidden in the jungle that we have to sneak off and see, of these Karen people who are hiding from their government. And just the chasm between me and the people now that I'm facing, this chasm of privilege, and I'm this American coming from the other side of the world with an unfathomably free and fabulous existence, and I'm looking at these people with an unfathomable suffering, and we are looking at each other as people do across chasms. And then the first thing in our meetings was that the children of the community or the village would stand up and sing a song, and then everybody would laugh and loosen up a little bit. And then the guitar was pulled out. It was Damien Rice was on this trip with me too. There was a few musicians. And we would start to pass around the guitar, and as soon as we sang, then it was like the chasm disappeared. It just disappeared. And these Burmese people were said, "Oh, that's who you are. I know you." And we left as friends. We couldn't even speak to each other, but we could totally feel each other through music. And that to me is just one of those essential experiences of music. It's why I love live music so much. It's that making family everywhere you go.
Yeah. And I just think this idea of joy, which is something that we've got to focus on, especially in times of real, obviously, I'm not going to go into all the things that are happening in this country right now that are destructive and harmful, but I think for all of us, trying to find ways to bring joy into this life and this work is really important, and music is obviously, it's like what does it.
On that, it makes me think of, how some people, when we want to make a positive change, we get so hung up on fixing that thing that's broken, and changing that person's mind that, and yet over here are all the good people doing all the good work.
Yes.
Who need support, so one of the things that I've been doing lately is comping tickets to the women's clinic in every city that I play in. Because a night of music out, as you know, could make you be able to go back and do your incredibly hard job for another year, those moments, so I'm not sure if I can change anybody's mind, but I sure can hold, people who need holding.
That's so, yes, give it up for that. Like, I totally agree. It's interesting, just kind of related that a week ago, a couple of my friends, Alicia Garza and Ijen Poo, we just launched this new supermajority as like this idea of like how can we actually, pull women together. And it's interesting, we had 50,000 women literally like in the first couple of days, like write in, and we asked, what's your superpower? And it's really interesting, the number one answer was empathy. And I think there is this hunger for empathy and connection in this country, and so maybe something good will come out of all this. But now I'm going to actually ask you another kind of hard question, and then I want to make sure we go to questions. I know we have audience questions. I'm not sure where my guy is that's going to show us when it's time. There you are. You're peeking there in the back. Okay. Do I have time for like one more question? And then, okay, that's Nick. Thank you, Nick. Okay, this is kind of super political, but anyway, I love this line. And I'm not even going to do justice to it. So you do have to read the book, right? This is the teaser for just the things that are amazing in this book. But you, we're selling books here, right? Yeah, okay. No, but seriously, but you write, patriarchy is the spring at the source of many rivers. Okay, and it goes on, which I love. And then you write later, actually several 100 pages later, whether it's fighting over the tax structure, reproductive freedom, whatever, do not skip over the patriarchy on your way to change the world, which I just think is a really important idea, because whether we're talking about racism, homophobia, all the isms, all the problems, there is an interesting connection to power and patriarchy. So I don't mean to get too heavy after all this beautiful talk about music and joy and empathy, but I don't know, I was really struck by your writing on this topic.
Yeah, that's cool that you bring that up, because I really feel like that sort of light going off in my head happened here at the New School. I was in Feminism 101. Can you imagine little Muppet baby Ani in Feminism 101 and gay and lesbian literature and creative writing? And that's what I took here. And Yeah, and I also have to say to our host, I was in a performance art group when I was at the New School, and we called ourselves Over 8 Miles of Books. Yeah, that's right. Strand. But to follow up on that idea, which I'm totally happy to talk about. It's not a downer to me at all. Any talk about this kind of thing makes me feel hope, So, I guess here at the New School and in that time and in those classes and all those ideas that came my way through these wonderful teachers, I feel like I started to get that sort of sense that peace is a product of balance, This is sort of how the idea gelled inside me, that peace is made of balance, whether it's an ecosystem or a body or a political, a relationship. Perfection is not of this world, but balance is all we need to achieve to create peace amongst each other within ourselves. And, if you step back one little half step from there, patriarchy, this fundamental imbalance that governs, that is at the bedrock of every society I know of on the planet now, can never lead to world peace. We can't get there from here. We have to go back, all the way back to the source of this water. And we have to, it's that first turn, I truly believe that if we can conquer patriarchy together, all of these other social diseases that are born of it will become possible to heal those too.
I think you're right. Okay, we're going to take questions, I think, now. Yeah, I'm getting the thumbs up sign. But before we do, can we just give thanks to Ani for being such an amazing writer and artist and... So I think we've got a couple of mics. Yep.
All right.
Folks are waving their hands. Okay, you're up.
Hi, thank you so much, Ani. You have been the soundtrack to my life. And my question is sort of about that. A lot of musicians inspire a lot of passionate feelings, but I feel like you really inspired a lot of passionate feelings, a lot of people I know. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about what it felt like and how you deal with having sort of these fans feeling you're the first person that is their voice about abortion or sexual assault or violence, and how that's a lot for one person to handle. And sort of you were sort of this voice of my time in college and young adulthood, and if you could talk a little bit about sort of how you manage the pressure of that and what it's like to sort of be so much in so many ways to so many people, and how you personally deal with it.
Yeah, cool. Thanks for your question. I've been speaking of balance and relating now to what you were asking. I've been really sort of transfixed by the yin yang, however you're supposed to say it. Just that symbol and what it symbolizes to me is like sort of at the core of what I'm transfixed by now. And this reality that we live within, of course, the nature of it is that the best stuff is also the hardest stuff, Or I guess you could say it in reverse, the suckiest shit is where the transformation occurs, when you break through, when, it's always the dark and the light, they are one They create the whole. And so, yeah, my relationship with my audience, it's like this thing that has felt like it's just sucking all the blood out of me sometimes. And then a moment later, it fills me in a way that I so needed. And it's both of those things in cycles, and you can't have one without the other, the love and the affirmation and the feeling seen and understood for the first time and feeling like I exist, and that happening between me and somebody else is just the best shit that I've ever found, and so I am so grateful for all of these moments, when people, interrupt my dinner. And it's always, I hate to interrupt, but, and sometimes in some years and some eras and some moments, it's too much for me, But at this, in the end, it's also just the best thing, to be kindred, to find out how kindred I am with people in this world. And it has carried me through my darkest times, this knowing that you're out there and that so am I, and that we have connected with each other through this music and moment. And so, yeah, it's that double-edged sword, but I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Thank you.
Hi. Thank you so much, obviously, for your honesty and your truth. I was curious, as a parent of a son and a daughter, speaking of patriarchy and women's empowerment, and how do you, if you're willing to share, talk to your children and in your household about how to kind of create that moving forward?
Well, I mean, those conversations that we have always seem kind of awkward and but necessary, of course, like in those awkward moments, like when you're got your fist in the air and your little 6-year-old daughter turns to you and says, "Mommy, why are we shouting hands up, don't shoot?" And you're like, well, so there's this thing called racism, and your daughter is just like, and explaining the ills of the world and this ridiculous shit that's going down, and it's like so unfortunate to do with a kid, right? It's just like to even show them the world sometimes seems like a drag to do. But luckily, I was thinking, when you were speaking, luckily, it's not those moments that are the teaching moments. It's the life. It's the who you are that you teach, no matter what you say or don't say. It's how you respond to the world. It's how you feel that they learn, It's what your dreams are that they understand as dreams. So in those awkward moments when I'm trying and failing to explain something to my kids, at least it's reassuring to me that that's not how they're learning, They're just learning by being with me, and, I hope that there's, it's an imperfect thing, but I hope that, they can get strength out of it and some truth.
Thank you.
Hi, Ani. How are you?
Hi.
Okay, really quick. I was that boy 20 years ago that took a feminism class in college because my street cred was that I love Ani DiFranco. And the class was like, great. And I was like, damn, I thought it was going to help. And now I'm the very lucky parent of an alternate family with 3 beautiful daughters, and I cannot wait to read this book and see when it's the right time to hand it to them and say, this is a manual, please. And I really mean that. But the question is, because I see what you do for women everywhere, and I'm always envious because I look at you as the lyricist that I follow. And what is your connection to, what do you feel like when you see, and you stand up there at these concerts, and I've been at many of them in the front row and been like, and what is your connection to this boy gay community when you see them out there and you know, taking up space when you're giving a message like this?
Oh man, take up the space, man. I love it. I love it. I love it. I mean, I gotta say that other young women who look like me or something coming up and saying, yeah, I got you, I love you, that's beautiful and sustaining. But the more diverse forms and makes and models that us humans come in that I can share those moments with, that is extra inspiring to me. You know, the way that we can find each other across differences of experience or, you know, communities or whatever, and we can accompany each other. And I just love that so much. The men in the audience, you know, the different ages, you know, the queer and the straight and the old and the young and the kids and the grandpa and the, you know, it's just, you know, I hope to get on this arc with, you know, at least 2 of everything, you know?
Hi. So much thank you. You and your music have held me through the last 20 years pretty much, and specifically through the room and the labor with both of my daughters, because it has helped me find the strongest parts of myself. Just what you said, you know, the magic is meant to do, and oh God. When you mentioned perhaps realizing too late, although I don't know how anyone ever realizes it except too late, that it's time to take some time for yourself. Inherently, you know, that's a private thing, but at the same time, how was that for you, and what did you find, and what did you reach for, and how does someone do that when they need to shift gears and really rejuvenate and refresh, even when it's not what their life is demanding?
I mean, well, I personally did it the stupid way, and I got sick. You know, I got sick. I couldn't play anymore. I couldn't. Things compounded, piled up, and the only way I can play guitar like that every night is tension and release, tension and release. To stay tense for years on end meant, you know, my arms eventually seized up. I had to not play that song and not play that song, and I couldn't play, and then I can only play an hour, and then, okay, now I gotta sit down. I can't play, you know? And so, yeah, a forced break, and still, I got right back on my horse as soon as I could, and it wasn't until the kids came along, and they don't go away. They don't heal. That shit don't heal. So it was like, now I'm lucky if I can get a word in edgewise with myself, if I can go and do my thing for 10 whole minutes at a time. And at first, that process was so excruciating for me. I've just had this luxury of pouring myself into what I love and everything else be damned, and a world that supported me in doing that. And then here's the kids, like, you know, and immediately my guitar was the enemy, you know, to them. It's like, even if they're happily playing over on the other side of the yard, if I pick up the guitar, boom, watch this, watch this, watch this. Like, they know. For Ani's other baby, You know, and it was a long time to acclimate to that for me, and But then, of course, there's gifts there. There's so many gifts in stepping back and slowing down. And once again, I wouldn't have found them. I wouldn't have had the wisdom to give them to myself. But I feel like I'm a better writer now. I feel like I could not have written a book if it weren't for these fucking kids getting in the way, you know, because this takes us, you have to step away and come back, step away and come back for a few years, you know, and incredible amounts of patience and all of this stuff that my kids forced me into, you know, so I'm not even sure if I answered your question, but
You
good
did.
luck
You
with
answered
all
many
of
of them.
that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, so this would have been my question even if not for your involvement with Hadestown, but do you have any interest in writing a musical?
Well, geez, watching Aeneas rock Hadestown for 13 years all the way to Broadway kind of, you know, makes me a little curious. But wow, speaking of patience and stamina and just a sustained vision that she has applied over all this time. And humility, you know, again, yeah, humility, right, Mom? Like, I feel like way beyond her years, Aeneas, you know, sort of, let me bring all kinds of other people into this project, like myself, who can't sing that song as good as her, who wrote it, seriously. But I want you to sing this, and I want you to sing this, and I want you to... She's not in that production, you know? She's just delegating and including and gathering and cooperating and collaborating, and wow, for the humility and the maturity that she applied. So I don't know, maybe someday I'll get to that level and could do that, but wow, what an endeavor.
Cool.
Ani, thank you so much for the many gifts of your music. You started to touch upon this in the last question, but my question for you is wearing the hat of mother and artist. How do you blend that? How do you balance it? How do you paddle through it?
Yeah, it's hard for any parent to keep hold of themselves and find that balance, isn't it? Yeah, we were just talking about that. I mean, yeah, it's just so much patience, so much giving over, and a little bit of a slippery slope, especially for women who are so prone to taking care of others and not doing their thing. So, yeah, I don't know how to strike that balance. I think that's for each of us to find, I imagine, you know, and all I can do is say, yes, it is not easy. I'm with you. Yeah, but I mean, one thing I've noticed, my daughter's 12 now, and my son is 6, and I don't know how old your little ones are, but you sort of think it's kind of like gonna be like this forever. Watch this, except that my daughter, the day after her 12th birthday, just put her headphones on, and they haven't come off. She has nothing to say to me right now, you know, and I'm like, how's it going, you know? And she's like, fine, you know. I'm like, you know, seriously, I'm like this geek, that weirdo that's hanging around her now. Like, do you want me to watch you do something? You know, so one minute you think, how can you sustain this? And the next minute it's shifted and it's gone. And they're gone and they're moving into themselves. And then it's like, fuck, right? What do I want to do again? So, yeah, I guess maybe giving over to the beauty of this now that you're in is like all I could want to do as well.
Hi, I'm really nervous. So I kind of ended up here by accident tonight, and it's amazing. And you changed my life when I was 12. I was this really, really isolated, queer, rural kid, and I was at a folk festival. And anyway, you're just amazing, and it's so interesting to be 38 and to be adults, right? And be how do you struggle with learning things and expressing yourself? And what you just said at the beginning about pretending you were alone, if I had learned that a long time ago, that would be amazing. And I just really, really appreciate how you struggle with things. And I'm wondering if I could ask Cecile a question.
Yes, please, yes.
Great. So I'm wondering...
Sorry, I was done.
Okay?
No, that's okay.
Yeah.
Make it juicy.
It's okay with you, right? So I'm wondering why you think that all of Ani DiFranco's fans grew up to be men or women. What are you saying to a room full of weirdos that the world should be run by just women? And Ani's a rock star. You're not. You're a movement leader.
So I may have misunderstood the question, but that's okay.
I think, yeah.
Sorry,
You're
I just wanna
speaking to the non-binary.
Yes,
I
I'm
actually
saying that this is a room full of adult weirdos and some young ones and all sorts of things. All the genders. It's so beautiful. Look at all of you. You're great. Ani's fans are nuts. Why do you think?
Oh, well, can I jump in?
Sure, absolutely.
I mean, I have been imperfect with my language on so many occasions.
Totally.
And I think as humans, that's what happens,
Yeah.
And I hope that you can feel the spirit from both of us of inclusion and recognition of humanity of all of us.
Yeah. No, I really do feel it from you. I really appreciate you a lot. I appreciate the way that you specifically said, that world of women, I don't know a whole thing about that world. That was really great, but I can be done.
Okay, well, yeah, I mean, that's a cool note to leave on because I think that this ability to, I think our willingness to accommodate, it's the bad word, to believe in each other, even when we make mistakes, is an essential ingredient to accompany each other through this. This is hard shit we're living through. If we can cut each other some slack as we're going through it together.
So,
thanks you guys so much. Thank you, loved ones, near and dear, friends I don't know. Thank you, Cecile.
thank you to Ani. Thank you.